So the title of this video is Moths, Rust, Thieves, and Inflation. Taken from Matthew's Gospel, chapter 6, verses 19 to 21. So let's take a look at that text. Matthew's Gospel, 19 to 21. Lay not up for yourselves treasures upon earth, where moth and rust doth corrupt, where thieves break through and steal. But lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust corrupt, where thieves do not break through and steal. For where your treasure, there will your heart be also. So we're going to take this, kind of break it down for you with my notes. And I'm going to try to bring in some of the Greek language for you. Okay, so the three enemies that we have are moths, rust, and thieves. Now if you notice, I just classify that as inflation. I'm not going to give statistics. What's the current rate of inflation? Is it computed accurately? Are we being lied to? It doesn't matter. You go to the grocery store and you will know it. You go to the retail store and you will know it. So I'm trying to pick up on this idea that inflation is upon us. And I suspect it's going to be upon us for quite some time, as it has always been. Now, the Greek verb there, thesarizo. Now that sounds like the word thesaurus, and it really comes from the same word, derivative, but it means to store up, to save up, to lay up. Now, of course, the adverb is not. Don't store up, lay up, what? Treasures. The saros, and the verb is thesarizo. Sounds familiar. Sounds like thesaurus. And it is the word that the English word thesaurus is derived from, because it's laying up or treasuring up words that are all similar. Don't treasure up or lay up or pile up wealth, riches, treasures. Do not store them up. Do not save them up. Do not lay them up. Where? Epi, on or upon. Tes, geis, earth, upon the earth. So, you're to not lay up treasures on this earth. Now, might be a time to say, well, yeah, I go to the store and I feel inflation. Man, do I ever. Well, then maybe we need to say, well, where do you want to put your treasures? And why not lay it up on earth? So why? Good question. Glad you asked it. Why? It's just one word. Why? Is answered with one word. Where? Where three things happen. And those three things are moths, rust, and thieves. Now the moths are cloth moths. That's a mouthful. The moths are cloth moths. And in the Greek language, the word that's translated for moth really refers to larvae. So it's like saying the larvae of the moths, but it's translated as moths, the adult form. I don't know if you're familiar with the whole concept of the bookworm. And I don't mean somebody who likes to read books. I mean the actual larvae that gets into books, and then they're born, and so they start to eat the paper. They're called bookworms. Now that's slang for somebody that likes to study and read books. So that's what you have to watch out for, are these moths. Now I remember growing up, in our house, we had a cedar chest, because back when I was young, and I was a little boy, it was popular for adults to wear wool. And wool could sometimes be attacked by moths. In fact, they oftentimes even get, they're called mothballs. I think you can still buy them at the store. They're supposed to repel these little larvae and these cloth-eating insects. So in the days of Bible, cloth was worth a lot of money. Remember, they even wanted to shoot dice for the cloth of the Lord Jesus, the Roman soldiers. Remember, Lydia in the Bible was a seller of purple cloth. So cloth was valuable, and if there was a cloth worm that was going to eat it, then it would cause great financial loss. So that's the first thing that happens, moths. The second thing is rust. Now the Greek word translated for rust, brosis, just literally means eating. So it's referred to the eating of things that are in the category of metals. Now it could also be translated as tarnish or corrosion. Alright? Either way, they get destroyed. I don't know if you've ever dealt with any silver or not, but a lot of times silver needs to be polished. In fact, in some churches, the communion ware that's used, the plates and the cup and the trays and so forth, oftentimes get polished because there's oxidation that occurs. And indeed, metals can get tarnished or rusted or corroded. When I was growing up, silver was still available. And my father mentioned to me that in the year to come, in the year 1964, he mentioned, would be the last year for silver in coins. And so I had a paper out and I would collect silver coins from people, and it was hard for me because I put them aside. Because my father told me they'd be a little more valuable because of their silver content. And I remember I had a collection, and somebody told me that mercury would polish the silver, this tarnished silver in the coins. So I went to the dental office, and at that time they were putting mercury in their mouth. And the dentist gave me a little bit of mercury so I could polish my coins. Crazy, I know. And maybe that's what happened to me. I got mercury poisoning. Alright, so moths and rust destroy, ruin, and make things worthless. And there's the verb for destroy. And that verb there is kind of based on the idea of seen, being seen. In other words, you can't see it anymore. You can't see the value of it anymore because it's corroded. Get a lot of these people that want to go out and treasure hunt, and they find something in a lake, or they find something in a stream, or they find something in the ground, and at one time it was good, but it got corroded. So moths destroy, and you can see James chapter 5 verse 2. James will mention this about clothing and moths eating away clothing. Rust destroys. And here's the Greek verb. It comes from the idea of seeing, or like a phantom. Okay? A phaniso. They go out of sight. In a way, it's like somebody in a sandstorm. They go out of sight. You can't see them anymore. You can't see the value. It's a ship lost at sea. You can't see it anymore. You can't, it's not revealed. Okay? So it's revealed and made clear and negated. It's made evident and visible, negated. So for things to be rusting or corrupting means you can't see any more value in it. Completely gone. Alright, so the next one are thieves. And the Greek verb for steal is klepto. And you know a little something about that word because we have the English word kleptomaniac. Okay? So a kleptes, or a thief, is somebody who steals. And of course they are taking the property of others without their permission. Now we've got a lot of this going on in our world today. A lot. And people feel they're entitled to steal. And I think I've told the story before, but I was at a Walmart and the electronic card reader and sending off to the proper source was down. It wasn't working, which means you couldn't go with your swipe card. You couldn't go with your debit card or your credit card. You had to pay cash. And I came up to the register and I said, well, will this card go through? And she said, I don't know. I'm not sure. I said, well, if it doesn't go through, I plan to leave my cart here and then walk out. Immediately, I guess secretly, she hit a button or something and the manager came over. And he took my cart. And I was just standing there dumbfounded. And he took it over to the information counter booth and let it sit. So I waited and waited, and I come up to him and I said, sir, are you planning to check me out over here? He said, no. I said, why'd you take my card? He said, because you told the clerk you were going to walk out. I said, sir, I didn't say I would walk out with the card. I said I'd leave the card here and then walk out. Well, it turns out that at that particular time, right after the electronics failed to function, he said they had at least a dozen people take their shopping carts full of groceries and walk out of the store without paying. Now, it's getting worse. It's a form of theft. Now it says that the thieves will break in or break through. Now back in the days of Bible, you had homes that were built of sun-dried brick. And you remember the story about the men lowering Jesus down from the roof. And they lowered him down. It says they dug through the roof with their hands. Now, you can't really go up and dig through a roof. And today in America, you'd have to have an axe and cut through the roof with an axe. But they dug through the roof basically with their hands, almost like dogs. So the thieves will just sort of start digging with their hands like you might at the beach with the sand. And they will come into the house and they will steal. Now this is where the but comes in, and having taught English for 5 years. P.S. That doesn't mean I won't mess up and not that doesn't mean I will not mess up and make a mistake grammatically. I have made them in my videos. But nevertheless, in teaching writing for 5 years, I always emphasize that when you use the word but, it's a sentence shifter, meaning it changes direction. But God, Martin Lloyd-Jones' sermon, powerful, but God. Now the change of direction is here, but do not lay up treasures on earth, but put your treasures in heaven. Put your treasures in heaven. Now I'm going to end this with a little apocryphal story, and I'll summarize it. And it is apocryphal, it's legend, it's not necessarily true, and I'm going to put it in my words, but it's pretty interesting. Supposedly, when Thomas went to India to preach the gospel, he came across a king, King Gondophoros, and this king was wanting to build a big palace. And somehow he recruited Thomas, and somehow Thomas agreed, and the king gave him all kinds of money to build this palace. Well, the king didn't know what was going on, and he came back and found out that there was no palace. And the king was angry and confronted him and said, well, where's all the money? What happened to it? And so he took the king out and he showed him the poor of the earth. And he showed them what he did with the money for the poor of the earth. And the king was still angry. And he's ready to imprison Thomas. And the king's brother died. Now the king's brother dies and goes to heaven, and he comes back to earth, and he talks to his brother and says, don't you know that man's a holy man, meaning Thomas. I went up to heaven and I saw exactly what he built. The treasures that he laid up in heaven for you, my brother, for you, King Gondophoros. And of course, the story ends with that moral that Thomas made the decision to lay the treasures up in heaven and not on earth for the king. Now, of course, it's a legend, it's a made-up story, it's apocryphal, it's not Bible, but I told it to present to you the idea that maybe in the middle of this inflation, there's a little word but in this text, but lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven. But lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust nor corrupt nor thieves do break through and steal. For where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. Is inflation eating at your dollar? Yes, it is. Is inflation eating my dollar? Yes, it is. So maybe we need to pause a little bit and say, well, what's really important eternally? And Jesus was trying to say it in the Sermon on the Mount. No matter what's going on in the economy, no matter what nation you live in, you can do your best to lay up treasures on earth, but the treasures on earth are going to be confronted with moths, rust, and thieves. The treasures on earth are going to be confronted with inflation. So, make a decision to put your treasures in heaven. And notice how the idea is, get your treasure there first, and then your heart will be there. And then you can live a life that dwells on the eternal and lives for the eternal. if you get some of those treasures up there, I'd like to say that maybe there's a box in heaven with your name on it called a treasure box. Be sure and send something up. Thank you for watching. End of video.